Hello friends, audience of this YouTube channel becomes bigger and bigger, but I try to remind you to don't forget to subscribe for this channel, because wider audience, it means wider reasons, wider thoughts and wider honest information about Ukraine and around Ukraine. The Russian Federation continued and intensified missile and drone strikes against Ukraine. Throughout the months of May, almost every day Ukraine is subjected to intense and frequent shelling by the Russian Federation using various types of missiles and drones. In particular, the city of Kyiv suffers from air attacks where alarms sounded almost every day at night. According to official information, most of the rockets and drones aimed at Kyiv were shot down, but their fragments sometimes fall into residential areas of the city or the roadways, which leads to the destruction of buildings, injuries or death people. If in February, for example, the Russian Federation carried out massive attacks on average from 60 till 80 missiles every 1 or every 2 weeks, now it is from 20 to 40, but almost every day. According to the statements of the military command of Ukraine, it is possible to shot down more than 90% of air targets, missiles and drones. During the month May, Russia fired at least 350 drones and 160 cruise and ballistic missiles at Ukrainian cities. Previous estimates of Russians' ability to continue this kind of strike by officials and many military experts have been underestimated. By air attacks on Ukraine, the Russian Federation seeks to achieve several goals. The first goal, to destroy the resources and reserves that are prepared for Ukrainian counteroffensive. Stocks of ammunition, fuel, destroy logistic hubs and so on. The second, to block Ukrainian air defense system, in particular Patriot air defense system. And the third one, the Russian Federation also seeks to keep Ukrainian society in a state of a deep stress and provoke social social psychose associated with the constant air raids and missile strikes. In general, the stressful state of society will have a negative impact on the economic, political and social life of the country. It will lead to an outflow on human capital from cities and industrial centers. It is possible that this could lead to the tension within the government team. With strikes on Ukraine, the Russian Federation also demonstrates its military capabilities to Western partners of Ukraine. At the same time, Ukraine is trying to stretch the front line and transfer active hostilities to Russian territory in order to realize its advantage in the size of army, pull back Russian reserves from the occupied Ukrainian territories and politically destabilize the Russian Federation. On May 30, a massive drone raid was done in Moscow. In some media and Telegram channels, 30 drones are reported. There is a confirmation of at least 3 explosions in residential buildings in Moscow. In addition, the border areas of the Belgorod, Kursk and Bryansk region were attacked by pro-Ukrainian armed formation, the Russian Volunteer Corps, Free Russia and others. Thus, the Russian Defense Ministry said that they had already repulsed 3 attempts to invade the region, made by forces of up to 2 motorized infantry companies reinforced with tanks. Responsibility for such attacks is claimed by the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps, which claims that they are fighting in the suburbs of Shebekino. the village Novaya Volzhanka and Titovka, which is difficult to confirm for nowadays. Situation in general battlefield. At the front, the Russian army has practically stopped advancing in all directions, but local military operations continue in the Kupiansky, Limansky, Bakhmutsky and Mariinsky directions. This calm before the storm is connected with the preparation by the parties of the war for the announced large-scale Ukrainian counteroffensive operation. Prigozhin plus Putin, or Prigozhin VC Putin. In terms of information, Evgeny Prigozhin, head of private military company Wagner, continues to actively criticize the Russian elite of and the military commanders. At the same time, it is very likely that the harsh rhetoric of Prigozhin is a part of strategy of Vladimir Putin and his entourage. In particular, his statements of Prigozhin create a social demand for the clearing and reformatting the Russian elites, which is beneficial to Vladimir Putin himself, since some of them prevent him from ruling the country alone. Peacemaking process. With regard to the peace negotiation process, there are two main groups negotiating in the world. The first, led by China, which includes Turkey, the African country, Latin American country, maybe Vatican, insist on cessation of hostilities and restoration of negotiations. Such a position implies the loss of a part of its territory by Ukraine and is more beneficial to Russian Federation. The second group, Ukraine, United States and European countries, adheres to the position of deoccupying all the occupied territories of the Russian Federation, and only after that it is possible to start negotiation with the Russian Federation. President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, said that until the Russian Federation leaves all Ukrainian territories, Kyiv will not even think about the peace negotiation with Moscow. Information is spreading in the Western press that the United States and the European Union countries are allegedly persuading the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, to soften the conditions on which he can negotiate with the Russian Federation. Probably this concerns the issue of the deoccupation of Crimea in Western countries. Opinions were often expressed that Ukraine would not be able to liberate the peninsula. Although the United States is allegedly set to end the hot phase of the war as soon as possible, since this may negatively affect President Joe Biden in the election in 2024. And the G7 countries are working covertly on security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of cessation of hostilities and the restarting of the peace negotiations. Thus, negotiations on Ukraine's accession to the European Union can already take place at the upcoming European Union summit in December 2023. But even if the development of such guarantees for Ukraine does not take place, to a large extent the situation with peace negotiations and the degree of possible compromises for Ukraine will absolutely depend on the situation at the front line and the progress of the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation. But the situation regarding the start of the counteroffensive remains not yet completely clear. In Ukraine, Ukrainian government insists first on receiving combat aircrafts, F-16 fighters, as well as the required amount of heavy equipment and long-range missiles. Also, Ukraine considers significant risks of a political and military nature they may arise in the event of failure of the counteroffensive operation. Budget situation in Ukraine. In May 2024, the monetary filling of the budget of Ukraine from domestic revenues exceeded the funding of international donors. It's good news. Thus, the international resources for May amounted to internal resources amounted to 205 billion hryvnias, comparing with the 113 billion in previous months. At the same time, international assistance amount to 120 billion, comparing with the April sum in 203 billion. Together with the international assistance and loans, 324 billion hryvnias was attracted to the state budget of Ukraine, comparing with 360 billion in April. Financing of the state budget through international assistance in May 2024 is now around 37%, compared to 65% in April. Recall that at the end of 2022 it was 55%. Ukrainian losses of the war. The World Bank estimates that the direct losses of Ukraine's housing sector amount 38 billion United States dollars. Recovery needs is 68 billion United States dollars for 1st June. According to the information of the regional military administrations, as of the end of 2022, more than 169,000 objects were damaged or destroyed, from which 70,000 apartment buildings, 132,000 private houses. Language law and parliamentary doings in Ukraine. The parliament proposes to extend the permission for the education in minority languages, whose languages are the official languages of European Union, from September 1, 2023 to September 1, 2024. The Verkhovna Rada has registered that the relevant draft law number 9332 on the regulation of certain issues of educational activities under the martial law. Probably this legislative initiative is intended to postpone the solution of the issue, but at the same time to reduce the degree of the dissatisfaction and criticism from the representatives of the European Union countries, especially Hungary. Since Ukraine is now initiating negotiations on accession to the European Union, which may take place already in the upcoming European Union summit in December 2023. Thank you, friends, for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe for this channel. Only honesty and straight information from Ukraine you can obtain here. See you next time. Bye-bye.